All right. This is going to be our next stream. And yeah, I think everything's set up here. Um so we're going to start out with a full SAT Desmos guide, and then we're going to do the same word vocabulary thing for the SAT reading and writing. Then we're gonna go right into more Khan Academy for reading and writing, and more Khan Academy for this, right? And if there's any uh, if there's any ideas anyone has for any other studying of the sort, just feel free to reach out. Yeah, so it's set up. So, all right, we can start with our full SAT Desmos guide. Right? This is just some basics of Desmos that everybody should know. If you're taking the SAT, just a short video. So I'm gonna mute and start it.
On YouTube. No fluff, no TED Talk. We're just going to be going over the exact Desmos moves that print points on the SAT. Now here's the deal. Desmos is the SAT math cheat code. I've combed the internet, stolen all the good ideas, and deleted all the cringe. And today, I'm going to be putting it all here for you guys to see. And there'll be Minecraft. There was literally a time where one of my students watched one Desmos video before taking the SAT and immediately jumped 50 points on the math section with no other studying being done. And that can be you too if you actually watch this video and lock in. But first, let's cover the basics. Desmos is a calculator, so it can do calculations. But it can also do a bunch of other stuff. For example, you can write the word table to create a table that you can actually fill in with points. You can use sliders to create constants like a, b, and c, which you can then adjust the values of. But you can also use x and y to be variables that can account for literally any number. There are other functions you can use too, like mean, median, standard deviation, distance, and midpoint. You can also use stuff to find the square root, the cube root, or even the percentage of different numbers. But now that we got the basics out of the way, let's talk about how to actually use Desmos. Single variable equations. If an equation just has one variable, put it into Desmos. The vertical line will just show the answer. Now, if it doesn't show the answer, that means you're screwed. Just kidding. You actually have to split up the equation and type it into both sides, y equals the first side and y equals the second side. And then you should actually be able to see lines, and usually at this point they'll be either not intersecting at all or literally be the exact same line. We'll get to what that means in a second. But first, try to solve this equation. So I can type 5x minus 2. And so I can see here, it intersects basically right above 3.3. Alright, but what if you have a system of equation with two equations and two variables? What you want to do is graph both equations and look at the intersection. That's the solution. If there's no intersection, there's no solution. If there's one intersection, there's one solution. If they're the exact same line, there are infinite solutions. And so you can probably pretty much just reason at this point, the amount of times that the lines touch are the amount of solutions that they have. So if I'm given this equation, 2x plus 3y is equal to 10, and I'm also given another equation saying x plus 4y is equal to 12, I can see here that essentially it intersects at 0.8 and 2.8. That's the only place of intersection, and so that would be the correct answer for this one. Inequalities. You can type y is less than or y is greater than to create an inequality. So keep in mind, it's not just the line that's the solution, it's everything in the shaded region above or below the line. And the line itself may not even be part of the solution itself. It only is if it's a solid line. If it's a broken line, that means it's not part of the solution. If you have two different inequalities, the place where they're double shaded is the answer set. This again kind of makes sense if you consider the fact that before you had the intersection being the answer set. Now we're also just looking at the intersection, except this time it's a lot bigger. So if I got two equations here, like 2x plus 3 is greater than y, and then I have another one here saying 3x plus 4 is less than y. So I can see there are two shaded regions here, and every place in the overlap where they're both shaded is where the solutions are. Intercepts and vertices. This stuff is pretty simple. If a line hits through the x-axis, meaning the horizontal axis, that's where it has an x-intercept. If the line goes through the y-axis, the vertical axis, that's where it has a y-intercept. If you have a quadratic function like one of these, the bottom point or the maximum point is the vertex of it. Now let's go on to statistics. If you're trying to find the mean or the median or the standard deviation, you can just use the function to find that. There's really nothing else. Just make sure you type in the numbers correctly because a lot of people accidentally don't do that and then they get these problems wrong. Circles. The equation for a circle is x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared. hk is the center of the circle and the radius is equal to r. There's a bunch of things you can do with this. If you take the farthest away points on the circle and use the distance function, you can find the full diameter of the circle, meaning how far the circle is from each side to each side. If you use the midpoint formula on the exact same points, you can find the center of the circle. Now, onto regression. Everybody thinks regression is the most difficult part of using Desmos, and they think it's the worst thing in the entire world. And it is pretty bad, but it's actually not as bad as it may seem. So say I gave you this table, and I should find what A would be in this equation based on it. Your first thought may be to cry, but your second thought should be to use Desmos regression. Just type in the table exactly like you see it, and then write the equation exactly as you see it as well. Except you have to make a couple of changes. Instead of just the x and y variables, you have to put x1 and y1. And instead of the equal sign, you have to put the tilde. If you do not do this, it's not going to look at the table for the information, and it's just literally not going to work. But if you do this correctly, you will see basically all the different constants you need from that equation. So I can pretty easily see that A in this case would be -5. Now let me be clear for a second, Desmos regression. But if you do this correctly, it's not going to look at the table for the information, and it's just literally not going to work. But if you do this correctly, you will see basically all the different constants you need from that equation. So I can pretty easily see that A in this case would be -5. Now let me be clear for a second, Desmos regression is all over the SAT, and there's basically an infinite supply of equations that you could theoretically use with it. The goal should just be to understand Desmos regression as well as you possibly can, so that way whenever you do see a problem like this, you'll be able to figure it out without too much stress. Onto your functions. This is pretty obvious if you've been following along up to this point, but functions are essentially the exact same thing as the y variable, except you can also plug in whatever x you want into them. You define a function by putting f of x is equal to something. And then if you want to find what the function would be equal to, just type f of whatever thing you're trying to find. You can also use this to transform the graph, like if you write f of x minus 4, or something like that. Finally, trigonometry. Not really too much you have to say for this one. Just go here and here to find the trigonometric functions. You can put them in and do whatever you want from there. Now, I know what you're thinking. Sounds cool, Magic Man, but I can't use Desmos for everything, right? No, you cannot. But you can use it for honestly almost anything. Anything involving line graphing, calculations, or basic equations can definitely be done using Desmos all the time. Basically, the only time you don't want to be using Desmos at all is if you literally cannot. For example, if you need to do some simple algebraic maneuvers like putting numbers on the other side of the equation, you can't do that with Desmos. Or if you need to make some kind of inference about what to do when you see a triangle, you can't make that inference itself using Desmos, since there's no way to really put shapes into it. But you can do the later calculations using Desmos, of course. But just remember, if you choose not to use Desmos when you could use it, you're literally causing yourself to waste more time and increase the chances you get more questions wrong. There's nothing noble about not using Desmos that much. You're literally just making it harder for yourself. Let's lock in for this SAT.
All right, so that was the video section. We're gonna move on to the vocabulary section, right? All right, so let's do the vocabulary part. Which word means a place where books are kept? That's going to be library. What does flexible mean? Flexible means adaptable. Right, what's the opposite of soft? That's going to be hard. What is the antonym of expand? So expand means to grow or stretch. So expand's antonym is going to be to contract. The book was so engaging that I found it hard to put down, obviously. The new law will Heavily accepted. That makes sense. Not largely, not deeply. It kind of makes sense, but I don't think so. It's heavily, largely. That makes sense. The company is dedicated. No, see, these kinds of things where it's a one word. They kind of mean similar things. It's kind of hard to pinpoint. Is committed. Is dedicated. I would love to see a definition of some sort or why they chose that, but it's fine. What is the baby of a dog called? The baby of a dog. That's going to be a puppy. Yeah. Her response was blank by frustration and disappointment. Her response was fueled, motivated, inspired, or driven. I mean, if you think about it, all these words are sort of similar, so I'm finding it kind of difficult to do this. Her response was inspired. I don't think that's the case because if it's inspired by something, it would be like an inspiration, right? So motivated would be uh her response was motivated by frustration and disappointment. Um that would make sense because it wouldn't be it's either fueled or driven. Fueled would be okay, let's click one of them. Okay. Well, it's fueled. She'll always wear a red dress. Okay. The term ubiquitous refers to something that is present everywhere, omnipresent. What does ubiquitous mean? Ubiquitous means present everywhere. Okay. The data was blank to identify trends and patterns. Um. Okay, so the data was assessed, processed, examined, or analyzed. So if it was assessed to identify trends and patterns, that doesn't make too much sense. Processed kind of makes sense. Analyzed, I think makes the most sense. The debate focused on the blank of renewable energy sources. So I think the debate focused on the relevance of. I don't think the relevance it makes sense here. The value, importance, or significance. I think importance and significance mean a similar sort of thing. So we could go with. Okay, so it was significance here. What is an antonym for open? It's gonna be closed. Antonym of transparent. Transparent, that's going to be opaque. Which word is the opposite of spec? So spec is going to be um the opposite of spec is going to be something that's larger. Um Indistinct. Check blank blemish. It's kind of okay. What's an antonym of tenacious? So tenacious, it sounds like a positive sort of connotation to it, so I'm going weak. So there we go. She has long blank hair. Um, long tall hair doesn't make sense. Long loud hair certainly doesn't make sense. These two, I mean, I don't know why they would put two colors, but I'll just go with black. Yeah, okay. What is a synonym of cacophony? I mean, cacophony means like loud noise, I guess. So, yeah, discord. What is a synonym of shout? A synonym of shout is going to be yell. Camaraderie, that means camaraderie sort of means some people that are coming together and having friendship type of thing. Sense of friendship and trust, yeah. Obsolete. Obsolete. Obsolete kind of means something that is outdated, right? Something that is not in the present. What do you call a baby dog? Um, it's gonna be puppy. And finally, this is the last vocabulary question for the day. His speech was a panegyric to his mentor. That's kind of a interesting word there. Um, panegyric. Panegyric. Uh, to his mentor. His speech was a criticism to his mentor. I don't think that's something that would be gonna happen. A warning to his mentor. I don't think someone would warn their teacher. An explanation. I would doubt that. I think praise seems better. Today we got a result of 20 out of 25. It's gonna be alright. The problem was today that a lot of these words, right, they meant very similar things. So that, like, heavily dedicated, right? Some of these words mean similar things, so that's why it was like that. So now, switching over to our Quizlet vocab now. Verb to agree without protesting. Um, to agree without protesting. So to agree without protest. Okay, requisition. That doesn't sound like a word that would mean to agree without protesting. Quell. Um, quell means something else. Coalesce. I would doubt it. Guessing quiz. There we go. Bitterness, discord, and again, this right here is going to include the word, I'm assuming. So I'm not gonna read this part, just gonna be reading this part. Bitterness, discord. Okay. These words are a lot harder. Alacrity, is that bitterness, discord? I don't think alacrity would be that. Acumen, that would be more of a positive thing, right? It would be, for instance, academic acumen. I think it's a positive sort of thing. It could be larceny or alacrity. Going with larceny. Ah, okay, it is acrimony. Okay. Acrimony means bitterness or discord. Okay. Continue. Keen insight. Keen insight. I think it's gonna be like I said, acumen, like, is a positive thing, right? Sharp, severe. It's gonna be acute. If you ever heard acute and some sort of illness, such as I'm not gonna name any right now, but yeah, that's sort of what it means. Intense. Impervious, immovable, unyielding. Um, unyielding. It's either astute or adamant because abide, that means to stay in or something like that. Curt means like short, something like that. I'm not sure. But it's either astute or adamant in this case. So it's gonna be probably unyielding. It's probably gonna be adamant. Alright. Extremely skilled. Astute or adept? I mean, it's probably adept. To stick to something, adhere to something, right? Like I'm gonna adhere to these streams hopefully, so it's gonna be adhere. Bitterness, discord. Though they vow that no girl live. Oh right, I can't do that. Um, bitterness, discord. Let's try again. Okay. It's gonna be acrimony. Bitterness, discord, acrimony. Right. Okay. Let's look at these words like we did last time, right? So I think this is gonna be our last sort of vocab thing, and then we're gonna move on because last time we didn't have a chance to go through this properly. A quiz. I kind of forgot this. To agree without protesting. Acrimony is like loud noise or something like that. Loud. Okay. Bitterness, discord. Bitterness, discord. Can be acrimony. Acumen means skill. Keen insight. Keen insight. Okay. Acute is going to be sharp, intense. Yeah. Adamant means you're consistently unyielding sort of thing. Yeah, unyielding. Adept is like your really, I guess it's similar to acumen, like you're good at something, extremely skilled, yeah. Acumen means you have insight, I guess, and adept means you're good at it. And then finally adhere is like stay close with something or be glued to something or something. Yeah, to stick to something. Yeah. Okay, so again, we're going with these terms. Acquiesce. I kind of forgot this again. Okay. Okay, to agree without protest. So acquiesce is to agree without protesting, right? Acrimony is like kind of discord. Acumen is like keen insight. Acute is like you are it's sharp and intense, severe. Adamant is like you're adamant. You're kind of unyielding on that matter. Adept is going to be you are uh very skilled at something. Adhere means you're sticking to it, right? Okay, so I think we're done. Just go back here and acquiesce. Right, acquiesce is gonna mean uh agreeing to something without just yielding to something, basically without any argument. Okay, let's move on to our Khan Academy questions, right? Which choice completes the text or conforms to the conventions of standard English? Though Pablo Picasso is best known for his Cubist paintings, he actually experimented with a wide variety of blank over the course of his long artistic career. A wide variety of styles and mediums, right? It's not apostrophe, right? Standard English, right? So, resurrection plants do not truly return from the dead. However, they are simply okay. Embodying the term resurrection plant refers to any species of plant that seems to come back to life after appearing fully withered and dead. Okay, that's one sentence. Resurrection plants do not truly return from the dead, however. They are simply exhibiting an adaptation that allows them to survive in very dry conditions for extended periods. So if you do comma, if you do dead, however, that could be a period, right? Period or semicolon. That makes a lot of sense. Separating with a comma, it's not strong enough. So I think we're gonna go with that. There we go. While researching a topic, students taking the following notes. Right. Biryani is a mixed rice dish, popular. Okay, so yesterday we had a video that said to just read this part first. The student wants to emphasize the difference between Malabar and Hyderabadi biryani. What is relevant information to accomplish the goal? So we're looking for the keyword here, differences. So we can already say this one's not going to be our answer. Both is not going to be our answer. So it's going to be, let's look at these. This is not a difference, right? I mean, I guess it is. This is the most comprehensive. We just need to check if it's true. Is this one? This isn't checking between these two specifically, right? And then we have Malabar biryani. So this one doesn't make sense too much either. Because it's not saying a difference, it's just explaining one of them. So this one makes the most sense. Yeah. Which finding from study, if true, would most directly support the claim that the High Line fosters community interaction? Which finding from a study, if true, would most directly support Robert Hammond's claim that the High Line fosters community interaction? Okay, whatever. Let's read the information and see what the claim is. So Robert Hammond has argued that the park has a potential to foster community interaction by providing a shared space that encourages social activities among locals. So what he's saying is that the park has a potential to foster community interaction by providing a shared space that encourages social activities among locals. So what supports that? So we look here, the High Line has become a major tourist attraction. If it's a major tourist attraction, does that prove that it fosters community interaction? Community interaction. So these are tourists, so it's kind of a medium support there. Local residents. So this is important because it says foster community interaction among locals. So actually we would have to cross this out because the claim is specifically about locals, right? So surveys conducted among local residents has increased since its opening. So it's reasonable, right? Property values have increased since the park's development. That just means that the development made the property's value increase. It doesn't necessarily mean that there's community interaction. And okay, this makes sense too, but it doesn't, these two don't make sense in the context here. So this is the only one that makes cohesive sense. Surveys conducted among local residents indicate that their usage of High Line for community events, social gatherings, and public performances has increased since its opening. A chameleon uses specialized cells in its skin to change color in response to its environment. When these cells are stimulated by changes in light, temperature, or mood, they expand or contract, altering the way. Okay, what completes the text with the most logical transition? So we need to look at the sentences before and the sentences after, and what sort of changes when you're talking about those two. So chameleon uses specialized cells to change color in response to its environment. Right, so when these cells are stimulated by changes in light, temperature, mood, they expand or contract, altering the way light reflects off the chameleon's skin. I mean, I don't think specifically works here. Um, um, in response to, okay, I guess it's not for example because they're two different things. Because it's contrasting that when they're exposed to light, they expand or contract and they alter the way it looks. And then afterwards, it says that it returns to normal. So a connecting word would have to be like by contrast because it's something, they're opposite processes. So we're going to go with B, by contrast here. Although many transposons. Okay, right. So this seems very complicated, right? When you just look at it. But if you look at the question first, that's the approach you need to go with. What finding would support the researcher's hypothesis? So we need to look at these. We need to look at the hypothesis first. So what is a hypothesis, right? The confirmation of a line transposon prompted researchers to hypothesize that the transposon family is tied to a capacity for advanced recognition. So, what is our hypothesis, right? So, hypothesis is that transposon family is tied to a species capacity for advanced recognition. So, what this means is that the transposon family is tied to the capacity for cognition. You're combining this together. So the human genome contains multiple transposons from the line family. Okay, so mm, so that the line family is tied to advanced recognition. So they have smaller brains, but they have a wider variety of transposon. That's all right. A consistent number of copies uh, is present across the genomes of most octopus species with few known corruptions. I mean, this makes sense. A human genome contains multiple transposons that are all primarily active in the hippocampus. Uh, I mean, it's not necessarily. Hippocampus is complex cognitive process. So yeah, this makes sense here. This one's the strongest, I would think. Because this one says that human genome contains multiple transposons that are all primarily active. This is already in the source material. A consistent number of copies is present. Doesn't see, these are kind of worse, so I'm gonna go with A. Could be wrong. Could be wrong, but yeah, A is the strongest answer. Present-day city of Tajikistan was for years the capital of the Tajik Autonomous Soviet Socialist Republic, one of the many nominally autonomous republics within the Soviet Union. Like blank period. Okay, so what completes the sentence? Like there. Like they are pure autonomous doesn't make sense. Like it's. So we need to talk about if it's or but it's not it is. Like it is pure. So it's gonna be either there or it's. So the present day city, the city was the capital of the Soviet Union. So because we're talking about a city, we're talking about its. Yeah. Okay. So the following text is from Jan Martel's 2001 novel, right? Life of Pi. The narrator's family owned a zoo when he was a child. It was a huge zoo spread over numberless numberless acres, big enough to require a train to explore it, though it seemed to get smaller as I grew older, a train included. What does the word spread most clearly mean? It was a huge zoo, spread over numberless acres. So it's going to be not hidden over numberless acres, not discussed, not coded. It's extended, right? It's extended over multiple acres. So we're gonna choose A, extended. All right. The beaver is a keystone species. Okay, what is the function of this? Right? From this, it was discovered that the evolutionary symbiosis that the beaver has with aspen tree. So symbiosis is basically when two different species kind of connect together in a positive relationship, right? So a beaver and aspen tree, uh, it's saying that the symbiosis does not preclude it from forming new relationships with different tree species. So, uh, because it has symbiosis, it can still uh, have relationship with different tree species, right? So the beavers change the ecosystem by utilizing Nothofagus trees in the same way they interact with aspens. What choice describes the function? So it kind of gives context, right, for the last sentence. Kind of makes sense. It contrasts the aspen tree versus. It doesn't really do that. It states a generalization. I think it dispels the generalization. How the beaver was first introduced, no. Yeah, it provides context, right? That clarifies why the beaver evolved to do this, right? Okay, so it's wrong. Um, what could be the right answer? So, how the beaver was first introduced, it doesn't say that, right? Oh, okay. So the beaver is a keystone species in North America. It was introduced. So this says how it was introduced. Not necessarily. Uh, it doesn't like contrast it, so it's either B or C. Okay. The underlined sentence provides a high-level learning gain from the introduction of beavers. So that's a generalization. All right. Through interpretations of its, although interpretations of its meaning differ, blank is both a great work of art and a powerful political statement. Okay. Oh, Guernica, Picasso's famous painting here. So, although interpretations differ, Guernica, Picasso's famous wartime painting, is both a great work of art and a political statement. I think I don't think we need the last option is incorrect because have an ending hyphen, you need a starting hyphen, and there's none here. This one doesn't make sense, you need a comma here. But this comma doesn't make sense because it doesn't sound right? You have this one makes sense, right? Although interpretations mean differ, Guernica, Picasso's famous wartime painting, is both a great work of Picasso's famous wartime painting is both. Although meaning interpretation of meaning differ, Guernica, Picasso's famous wartime painting, is both a great work of art. That actually doesn't make sense, so I'm switching my answer to A because right, it makes sense. More in the sentence. Right. So for this one, we're gonna go and pull up our graph here. With a mass of 112.67 grams. The Star of India is one of the largest star sapphires in the world. The density of a star sapphire is approximately 4.0 grams per cubic centimeter, right? Which of the following approximates the volume of Star of India? So, if you have a mass and density is 4.0, grams per cubic centimeter. And this is in grams. Right. So what's the volume? So volume is going to be measured here in cubic centimeters. So this is like, there's four grams in every cubic centimeter. My mind is kind of blanking right now, but there has to be 1 gram every 1 cubic centimeter every 4 grams. This over 4. It's gonna be 28. So this is divided by 4. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I was just kind of messing around a little too much, right? Okay. Alright, so we're going to do 5 right, of these Khan Academy problems, and then I'm going to stop for the day. Right, because we're getting close to our wrapping up. So yeah, I'm just gonna do this and then wrap it up, right? The price of an airline ticket. The price of an airline ticket it varies, right, between depending on the day of the week as shown in the table. What's the difference between the mean and the median? Mean and the median ticket price is rounded to the nearest dollar. The mean versus the median ticket price is rounded to the nearest dollar. So for this one, we're just gonna go with our handy mean and median. So we're gonna go with 256, 345, 345, 473, 473, 473, and 256. And then we're gonna go the median. It's gonna be 345. So what's the difference rounded to the nearest dollar? So it's gonna be 374.4 minus 345. So it's gonna be 29, which is gonna be A. The plane shows the graph of the quadratic equation, okay, which the following represents solutions. The solutions to this. So I guess where it hits these, when it hits the x-axis, that's going to be your solution, the roots of the equation. So, but that's not exactly what it's asking. It's not asking the x-intercepts. What represents all solutions to the system of equations by this quadratic and the linear equation? There's going to be 2 solutions here, but we're just going to list them out, right? Just like that video said, all we gotta do here is do this and then do this. 1/2 x plus 3 minus. So we're intersecting -3, 7, -3, -7, and 7, -2, 7, -2, and negative. So checking that's right. Alright, Noah is having his driveway resurfaced, which costs $25. That's quite a bit. $25 per square meter. The driveway will also be giving a new edging around its perimeter. If the perimeter is 36, what relates A and C? So A and C, A is going to be the area, and C is the cost. So the area is going to be, the area in square meters, cost is going to be 25 times the area. So C equals 25A. C equals 25A. Oh wait, there will also be given edging around this perimeter, which costs $6.50 per meter. Okay, so that's an additional cost. Let A be the area in square meters and C be the total cost. If the perimeter, so the perimeter is 36, so 36 perimeter times $6.50 per meter, it's going to be $234 upfront for the perimeter. And then on top of that, whatever the area is, we're going to have to add 25 times that, because square meters times 25, right, it's going to be our cost. So it's going to be there. So this is going to be our last question before we wrap up the stream. So that's it. 3x squared plus 4x minus k equals 0. So in the given equation, k is a constant. So for what value of k does the equation have no real solutions? No real solutions. So we could just plug and trial and error this. So plus 4x minus k. So minus -4/3. So for this one, a real solution is where it hits our axis here, the x-axis. So we can see this hits the x-axis, so it's going to be a solution. So that's not going to be our answer. 4/3. See, it hits two places, so again, it's not going to be our solution. -5/3. This is above it, so this is not going to be a correct solution. Just for fun, we're going to do this. Yes, he has two solutions there, so it's going to be our answer. And with that, we wrapped it up. We're done with today's stream. Alright.